good morning, all. My name is Anthony Carter, coming to you live from Long Beach, California, with another edition of Visionaries and Truth Tellers. And today I have a special guest who has been a big force, the driving force in me doing documentaries, which is something I've been wanting to do for 100 years and put it off. But then I met him and he said, why not? And I said, why not? So I'm going to introduce him. He's Professor Raphael. You pronounce your last name Angulo or
Angulo, correct.
Angulo? Okay. He's a professor at USC. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about himself. We'll start off with a 30-second bio, or you can take longer if you like. So whatever you want to do.
The 30-second bio. Born in East Los Angeles,
Mhm.
raised in the San Gabriel Valley here in Southern California. Went to Catholic schools. Actually went to a Catholic seminary to be a priest. Left that and really became enthralled by social service settings. My undergraduate degree in psychology and criminal justice, my graduate degree in social work, and as well as filmmaking. And I've been involved in a wide variety of social service settings, from working in child welfare, meaning public child welfare, to working in medical settings, to my current position now as a professor, now entering my 20th year.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I think that was just about 30 seconds. That was that was a nice compact 30 seconds. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. What excites you these days? What are you excited or passionate about these days?
Oh, I love that question. I love it. I love it. Um, right now, I'm fascinated by the current movement in the United States, especially after the summer rebellion and the current rebellion that's going on.
Mhm.
I saw a map on USA Today, and it was one of those maps with a whole bunch of dots.
Mhm.
And literally, almost the entire country was filled with dots in regards to protests
Mhm.
that were going on in the United States, which to me provides a sense of just how tired we are
Mhm.
of what is currently going on in law enforcement, but also this sense of saying no to systemic racism.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that we are at a point in time that absolutely says this system has to change, or in some sense, this system has to go. And so that map from USA Today was just an enthralling look into America and to its capacity to say we will be a community together to fight systemic racism together. That to me is currently, along with other things, of course,
Mhm.
is really keeping my attention.
Okay. Great. Yeah, there's a lot of there's so much change in there. I think about that, especially in the last, I think the last year and a half has been a huge wake-up call in a way that hasn't happened probably, I would say probably in 50 years. I'm just gonna guess. I'm willing to bet. And I'm hoping that we can take this, get through it, get to the other side, and make something really wonderful and beautiful and powerful, and not just go back to business as usual. Like, oh, that was a moment. Let's keep doing the way things we were doing. Let's keep doing things the way we were doing them before. Hopefully, this will be the thing that will shake the cobwebs out. So we'll see.
We shall
You know,
see, Anthony. Absolutely.
yes, humans are are predictably unpredictable. So it would be great. Um, so tell me a little bit about your. I was doing some research on you, and I only know you as my professor because you're. So tell me about. I have a couple of questions I want to talk to you about. How did you? Let me back up a little bit. I know that you're. What was the initial reaction when you decided to combine filmmaking and documentary filmmaking with social work? And how did you know it was going to work, or did you know it was going to work?
Yeah, Anthony. I had brought up this issue probably in 2004,
Hmm.
2005. And I wrote a syllabus, which is in essence sort of a draft of what this class is going to look like. And remarkably enough, it was sort of accepted with a lot of caveats,
Mhm.
and other professors sort of passing me by the hallway like, good luck, or I'm not exactly certain I see what the connection is, but
Mhm.
sounds kind of interesting. And so there were a lot of doubts. People were wondering, what does filmmaking have anything to do with social work? And I think many of them saw it, oh, nice. Like this is going to be cinetherapy and it's going to be utilized for sort of psychological interventions. You bring, at-risk youth to sort of tell stories about themselves, and eventually they're going to get better. And that was not its intended purpose from the beginning. It really was an attempt to display the power of stories and moving images
Mhm.
as precursors and as the capacity to create change in communities. And so the research is fairly clear, Anthony, in regards to the power of stories to change mind and hearts, but even clearer in regards to the power of documentaries to be part of larger social movements. And so this is all evidence-based. It's not anything like hearsay. This is all something that has been researched by scholars in cinematic studies, scholars in sociology, and it's a real sort of indication that images and stories have this powerful way of having somebody think a second time, creating a sense of both awareness as well as leading them to some engagement in action towards that particular subject matter. So for me, it made absolute sense. I am a filmmaker, I am a social worker. And to be able to bring those two elements together was like a piece of the puzzle. They fit. It just took time for my fellow colleagues, professors, to see that fit. And I think it wasn't until our first film festival that sort of jaws dropped and people were asking, wow, I never really made that connection. And so it required a little bit of sort of evidence as
Mhm.
well as an experience at this film festival for them to be able to say, okay, I got it. This makes absolute sense.
Okay, and I ask that because one of the things I love about you and what you're doing with this class, and I have to admit, on more than one occasion, after the class was over, I've been in tears because I've been so moved about what we're doing, who you are as a person, what people have energy or whatever, but what you kind of encourage or allow, like what do you make space for, right? And then on top of that, I think some of the tears come from also looking at just what you just said, like being able to take different things and put them together, especially if nobody's put those things together before. Because people are like, well, how is that going to work? That doesn't make any sense. So um, meeting you and being in the class is giving me the permission for a whole lot of dreams and things that I wanted to do that were so, if you looked at them like quote unquote on paper, you're like, well, that makes absolutely no sense. Like we've never seen it. We may or may not want it to exist. We don't, have you lost your mind? And it's like, no, trust me, this is gonna. And so my question to you is further with that is what did you tap into? You mentioned the word doubt, right? Which is one of my favorite words because I think it has a lot of things connected to it. And many times people will use it to stop, right? Or they'll use it as a signpost that says, okay, doubt means don't, we shouldn't do this. So what did you tap into that allowed you to keep going when other people were doubting you? Or did you ever doubt yourself?
I love that question, Anthony. I think it's clear that I had a higher purpose.
Mhm.
That is to say, that it just felt deep within the very core of my being that one, this
Mhm.
is something that I love. and two, that this is a contribution that I wish to make to social work. And so this higher purpose, which you can't delete, which you can't take out of the human body, which you can't, um, the only thing that gets in the way of higher purpose is fear. And fear is a antithesis
Mm-hmm.
of the higher purpose. And so when I look at what you're going to be engaged in and currently are, Anthony, in terms of creating your documentary, um, it's like it twangs deep inside you
Mm-hmm.
like a guitar twang,
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Mm-hmm.
vibration inside you that says this is a story I have to tell, because it's about health, it's about me,
Mm-hmm.
it's about wanting to spread the message of, you know plant-based whole food, really being able to consciously and intentionally create a world for yourself that is connected to the healthy. And so for me, it just made all the sense of the world. I knew that I was sort of drawn to this on an internal vibration that was saying, Angulo, you have to do this. This is
Mm-hmm.
your sense of calling. And I would even argue, Anthony, that all filmmakers, including yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that if there is not that higher purpose, and there's two other elements that I want to make mention of if I can, and when
Mm-hmm.
you allow me to. Um, it seems to me that some of the great documentaries and great films are because the director or the screenwriter or the producer had this deep sense of inner vibrancy. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
needs to be done. This needs to be done. And, you know, there may be, the producer who says to the director, no, let's get this actor, or no, let's focus on this particular area, which is not even consistent with your sense of vision.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, the documentary or the feature film becomes, that's because the director has not followed the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to follow the heart. And it doesn't matter if the producer says, you know what, who's going to watch this? That doesn't matter. That doesn't, because we don't even know who's going to watch it if the producer does what it is that they want to do. We just
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And so that capacity to just trust the heart, I think, is absolutely essential. I think the second element is you have to be kind of like a huckster. You got to be quick. You got to kind of move it, and not allow other people to sort of tell you what it is that you need to do. And so I needed to do a little bit of that in terms of convince the curriculum committee that this was a worthwhile class to teach. And I had to know the right people, and I had to know when was the right time. And so being sort of a husker, kind of being able to say, okay, let me kind of play the game, but, in a way that's both of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is to be visionary, in terms of what it is that you want to create. There's a saying that where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there is no vision of the documentary perishes, or the
Mm-hmm.
film. And so I think, our capacity to hold higher purpose, being able to be sort of a husker, just kind of really hustle in a remarkable sense, and to have a sense of vision, I think, is absolutely essential. And that's what drew me to wanting to create this class.
Okay. I'm gonna take that in for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
it Because it's a lot, and I wish um, it's a lot. It's like they always say, like my husband always says, it's simple, but it's not easy. Like a three-step process, and I wish people could get it, because sometimes I struggle with one of those steps and not the other one, right? Or I may struggle with two, but not the other one, and it's kind of like trying to figure out when to. Best way I can describe it is like when you're teaching or when you're parenting, right? It's a science and an art, and you have to figure out which, you have all this stuff inside, and you have to figure out what do I need to say to this person to get them on board, right? because maybe they're the gatekeeper to get to this over here. And then there are other people who just get it right off the bat. So I think you're always doing this almost like a dance, trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to lead with at any given moment? And it's funny that you said the thing about the huckster, because I've been watching there's this guy, his name is Chris Voss. He worked for the FBI for a number of years as a hostage negotiator. And he teaches his class about how you negotiate with people. And he said every day in your life, you're doing probably 7 negotiations a day,
Right, right.
trying to decide we're doing this, we're not. And he was somebody who kept coming across my path, right? And I saw him, and I'm taking these classes on masterclass. The ladies who own the agency where I work gave me that as a gift. So I have a year subscription. And I've
Nice.
been trying to figure out how I was going to save up to start taking these classes. And then it just popped up in my email one day. And I was like, oh my God, this was on my radar, And I saw that, when you go in there, I saw him. And then I'm in another film mentorship program where we do features and TV shows and that kind of thing. And so the guy who runs it mentioned this guy and mentioned this guy. And I thought, well, God, like, you mentioned it. And I said, let me look at this again, because I might have missed something. So I started going through his class. It was all about negotiating with people, and how you get people to a negotiation, not the way that people normally think about it, which is, I'm going to win, and it means you lose, right? Or vice versa. Or it's like, no, we're collaborating. How do we do that? How do we collaborate to create something over here? And when he said that, I thought, yeah, you can use this. And I've actually been using these hostage techniques that he showed. No, he played a tape where he was negotiating with this guy who was in a bank or whatever. And there is something to it. And I've been using it probably, I would say, every day for the last 2 weeks, because it's like there's something about the way he was doing it.
Wow.
So it's kind of like, I think, and it goes back to what you're saying about filmmaking. And I find, and I've noticed this since Thursday or Friday of last week, that now, and I may have shared it with the class, now for me, this has become an obsession. And it's kind of like I've given it this attention, and now it's kind of taken over my life. So I'm seeing these different connections everywhere. People I've been trying to reach for 3 or 4 months are like getting back to me. I mean, that was all day Friday. People were emailing me and calling me about wanting to do this. And it's kind of like, it's interesting when you follow that vision and just trust and keep going and trust that, well, a couple of things, that people may not see it because it's not their vision. They're not, but the trick is to find enough people to see it, to move it to the next, the next level or next period, whatever you're going to do. So yeah, that 3-step process, I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me ask you about, let's back up just a little bit. Tell me about your time in Bali. And then I want to talk about some other things.
Yeah, Bali is a remarkable
Mhm,
island. It's part of Indonesia. Indonesia is predominantly Muslim, but on this
mhm,
island, it's predominantly Hindu.
mhm,
And some of the great anthropologists, Margaret Mead, Gregory Bateson,
mhm,
have gone there to study Balinese culture,
mhm,
society, rituals. Miguel Covarrubias, one of the great sort of Mexican writers and painters, went out there in the early 20s and 30s and wrote one of the seminal books on Balinese culture. I went there in the early 1990s on more of a whim. Not that I got on a plane and let me just go to Bali. I landed in Java in Indonesia,
mhm,
and someone said, "Hey, why don't you go to Bali? Just take a boat from Java
mhm,
to the island." And I said, "That's a great idea." And I did, and I just immediately fell in love with the culture, the rituals, and I made a lot of friends. And imagine an island with literally thousands of temples. Imagine an island in which these remarkable sort of cremations are taking place of those who have passed away, and the colorful costumes and music are a remarkable sight to see. And so I would return back, and it made sense to me that I wanted to study the Balinese and more in terms of parental methods of discipline and perceptions of child abuse.
Hmm.
I am a social worker. I did my thesis on that particular thing. So, with the help of the Indonesian consulate here in Los Angeles, I was able to write a survey and, with some assistance, go out to Bali and interview a whole host of Balinese from different parts of the island to study. And one of the things that I found out was that the levels of child abuse were remarkably low in comparison to other areas of Indonesia.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is because of the strong social supports. That is to say, that it's broken up into banjars, meaning
Hmm.
that these are small communities that celebrate birth, marriage, death, but also have a remarkable role to play in providing that social support, what we call a protective factor,
Hmm.
in allowing us to be able to better care for our children, because now it's not just one or two individuals taking care of a child,
Hmm.
it's an entire village. We've
Hmm.
heard this term before.
Hmm.
And so what we notice here in the United States is that families that are isolated tend to have increased levels of child abuse.
Hmm.
And so this capacity of utilizing rituals and social supports is an absolutely remarkable way of really lowering the incidences of child abuse and really seeing the child as something both with dignity and almost sacred.
Hmm.
The way the child is not allowed to have his or her feet touch the ground until over 100 days, in a way of sort of protecting them from evil spirits. And so my time in Bali has been absolutely a blessing. And when I return to Bali, it's always gives me a sense of remarkable peace and ease of spirit. And so, to you, Anthony, and to others who are listening, I would highly recommend Bali. You can get a bungalow for about 40 bucks a night right next to the beach.
Hmm.
Food is relatively inexpensive. And, Bali was sort of featured in the movie Eat, Pray, Love.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and you remember sort of the terrace rice fields and just this golden green that just sparkled. So Bali has a real significant meaning for me. And in fact, currently in the process of developing a program to bring others to Bali, from a more of a you're
Yes,
in,
please. Yes.
you're in. But this would be a great, island for you and your husband to travel to. I
Mhm.
promise you that you will not regret it. You will not
Mhm.
regret it.
Wow. Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research on you. I was reading about Bali and children and child raising, and I often wonder, that's something I think about in terms of how isolated we are as a culture and how much we basically think we own our children, right? And when you own something and you're isolated, that means you can do whatever you want to do, right? There's no checks and balances. And it's kind of like I was talking to somebody recently about it, how I was telling somebody about how a lot of young people don't, they not only don't grow up around older people, but they don't know how to behave because they only see them on TV, right? They don't know. And if you're raised intergenerationally, like a lot of us were, like I had, grandparents and uncles and aunts that all lived around each other. So you would get a different perspective on whatever it was you were doing, right? And it's kind of like, and in many ways, I think we've lost that. So any culture that has held on to that, I'm definitely interested because I think a lot of times what people don't realize with kids or with you know, with most things, but definitely with children, the things that you do or you don't do, they show up later. Like it takes, you know, you plant seeds
Right.
and you're thinking this person isn't listening. And I teach, so I know this, you know, and I have grandkids, and you may have a conversation with somebody and you may hear something 5 years later and you're like, and you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I remember we had that conversation and I suggested this over here. So yeah, I definitely, so let me know, I'm there. Let me know, I'm definitely, anybody, any culture that does it differently, and when I say does it differently, believes that, you know, it's kind of like when I used to read, I don't know if it was Native American, or there was I used to read things on the Berdache, right, and these different cultures, and it was all about how, um, you know, in different cultures, and in that culture, there was a place for people who were quote unquote different. So I'm always interested in cultures that have a place, that everybody has a place, right? Um, Not a domination, not to be dominated, but everybody has a place, which means everybody can contribute. So I'm always interested in that. So I'm definitely, so let me know. I will,
Yeah,
I can go
absolutely,
tonight if you want. I
Anthony.
can pack up.
You will notice as soon as you arrive the spirit of hospitality,
Mhm,
and that hospitality is not only part of the culture but also the family. And so the birth of a child, the way the Banjar responds to that child is a spirit of hospitality.
mhm,
And I think it's such a remarkable message for us in this country, um, to have that spirit. With our prior president, there was not that spirit of hospitality of those
mhm,
who come from other countries. There
mhm,
was not the spirit of hospitality that said, those who come here through grit and energy and hard work ethic, no matter where, no matter where, is
mhm.
welcomed in this country. And you never got that sense from the past president. And so, I think our current president has a greater level of hospitality, and that's coming across. And so, yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. It makes all the
Mhm.
difference in the world, whether you're hospitable in a classroom setting, whether you're hospitable in a family setting, in a work organization setting. If people don't feel it, they're not going to share. They're going to be fearful. And so, I think we really need to pay close attention. How hospitable am I to somebody new? How hospitable am I to someone who's sitting next to me on an airplane? And
Mhm.
kind of engaging in small talk. How hospitable am I to somebody new coming in the workplace, and I can welcome them and say, hey, welcome to, our work. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Those small gestures mean a lot.
Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I used to do a lot of RC, reevaluation counseling. And it was all about how, I remember them saying that like when a baby is born, they're looking around to see, you know, where do I plug in? Where do I connect? And I think a lot of times in our haste to do whatever, we forget that, right? And we forget that, you know, it is not even something that, and people try to explain, like, you know, well, I don't really feel that here. And it's not anything, it's kind of like, it's not anything, one thing anybody can point to, but when it's done well, or when it's one thing that's not that, they can get it. They can point to that. Like, okay, you know, the fact that you came up to me, like you said, you know, day one and said, look, this is the lay of the land. If you need me, call me, whatever, and basically made yourself of service and said, okay, we're in this together, right? How are we going to do something together? And I think a lot of times, most jobs miss that. You know, there's a lot of, yeah, I definitely want to go see, I want to go to Bali and I want to look at other cultures, how they do things with children, how they do things with, you know, as you age out of childhood, what does that look like? Like, how do we set that up? So I'm there. So just let me know.
Awesome. Awesome. You got it, Anthony. You got it.
Just like when I saw your class, my friend, was an ex coworker. She went to USC's social work program, and for a week I had been saying and writing and speaking out loud that I was like, I'm going to dedicate myself to doing films. And I was like, I really want, and I want to say I said documentaries, but I said I want to dedicate myself to learning absolutely everything I can about filmmaking. And then within less than a week, she sent me the link for your class. And as soon as I saw it. That was Monday. Wednesday, you guys did, you did your presentation. I signed up. I think I signed up before you finished because it was just like so. You were talking about like a guitar and things that resonate, right? And the older I get, the more I trust that. I've always had it, and I only get in trouble and run into drama and nonsense when I don't when I go against like
Right.
the gut is like or the heart is like, okay, do this. Like, no, I don't think that doesn't make sense. Or somebody else knows more than me. I should follow their lead. It's like, no, you should. So I think that it's as you get older, you learn that. And then what I'm learning is that you many times you learn the same lessons but on a different level. It's like, me doing the films now. It's like I'm learning to trust myself on a whole other level. And it's like, oh, I thought I had conquered that. It's like, no, this is another level.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different way of me, and it's going well. I mean, I'm learning a lot, and it is what it is. But we will keep going, and we'll learn. So I appreciate that. I really I'm honored to be in your class. I'm learning a lot. I thought I knew a lot before, but then I got your class. There's a whole world of things I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was, a possibility, or you could do that. So um, I find
And this was
myself,
all by trusting your instinct.
yes.
Something internally was saying, I need to go there. I need to follow that star, if you will.
Hmm.
And how many people have we spoken with who had a separation or a divorce, and that person says, even before we got married, I had this instinct that something was not right,
Right.
this intuition.
Hmm.
And if we have that, we have to really go deep within and say, something's not right here.
Right.
There's a part of me that doesn't trust this person. There's a part of me that says this is not the right time. And our ability just to honor that instinct,
Hmm.
I think 95% were right, that instinct. Maybe the other 5% not, maybe our own biases or prejudices get in
Hmm.
the way. But damn, I just can't say enough about that instinct, that if you just listen to it and trust
Hmm.
it, it tells you the right thing.
Well, the thing about it is, I think as you get, the more you trust that, and the more we're not taught to honor ourselves, and we're taught that everything needs to be a show, and everything has to be a production, and it's like a performance, right? So then you learn, and that's not trusting yourself, right? And you learn the difference between. I was writing about it this morning. The difference between, it's like when I was doing all this acting, right? And you would get this inkling in your gut. The difference between this inkling that says, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and it's scary because you haven't done it and you don't know what's on the other side of it. That's a very different feeling than, run like hell. This person is not the right person. Right?
Right.
And I think, we part of it is we don't give ourselves any quietude, any moments of just like sitting and saying, okay, what do I need to do right now? It may be nothing, you know, but I think we don't. That's something that other cultures have, and we don't honor that. Everything is always, well, I've got a list of to do. I've got to get all these things accomplished on a weekend because I work during the week. Why? Why do you need to do 50 things a week
Right. Right.
that aren't connected to any a higher purpose or anything? Just something to do, right? So trying to really listen and say, okay, maybe I need to have um, spend some quiet time with this person or by myself, as opposed to doing this, doing this, doing this. So yeah, um, good stuff. I want to talk about, switch a little bit about, I want to ask you about, um, you had mentioned this before in class, and I'm really fascinated with this concept of oral histories. Because I'm getting ready to do one with my grandmother.
Mm,
I talked to her on Mother's Day and she agreed to do it. I don't think she knew what she was agreeing to, but she agreed. I told her, I think I gave her enough to, to pique her interest. But so can we so talk to me a little bit about oral histories, what the significance what the significance of them is, and how do they impact the world and your family?
absolutely. So I'll talk about oral history from both a social science perspective and
Mhm.
then from a family perspective. In history, there's a lot that has not been written. And you know this, Anthony,
Mhm,
especially in regards to the African American experience,
mhm,
that sort of the European or Eurocentric mindset has really relegated stories of African Americans and not included them in the history books.
mhm,
Um, and so, what oral histories attempt to do is to capture the more nuanced and sophisticated elements of a history that perhaps is not involved in those history books. That is to say, that oral history has this remarkable way of personalizing the historical. That oral history now brings to light an individual who has experienced the Holocaust
mhm,
or the Cambodian genocide or the Armenian genocide.
mhm,
I'm talking about genocide in particular because um, many times those who have survived, their stories have never sort of been told.
mhm,
But also you can talk about oral history from the immigrant experience and what that was like to cross into the United States, or the diaspora of of those who are coming from Nigeria, for example, or
mhm,
Somalia, and what's that experience like to come to the United States, into a brand new country. And so oral histories really attempt to bring to light new experiences that perhaps are not written in public policy, in history books, etc. Where literally you put a camera or a recorder in front of somebody, excuse me, and allow them to tell a story. Yeah, you provide the prompts in terms of the questions, but you begin to allow them to really tell these stories. And these oral histories can be anywhere from a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. It all depends on what the subject matter is. And so then what we do is that we then look at these oral histories and do what's called a content analysis, where we begin to look, okay, so these are the experiences of those from Nigeria who are coming over to the United States. We've interviewed 25 of them, and now let's do a content analysis and see what they have in common. And then we begin to sort of write that up and begin to say some of the common experiences of Nigerians coming to the United States are X, Y, and Z. And so those stories are now heard and then published. From a family perspective, I tell my students all the time as I talk about oral history, before your mother, your father, your grandparents pass away, get their oral history, because once they pass away, that's not going to be possible
mhm,
anymore. And many students are sometimes shocked, like, whoa, I never thought about that. But that makes a lot of sense, because now you can share that oral history with your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, and it becomes a part of the family. Oh, we do have this CD. Oh, we have this file. Oh, we do have this, whatever it may be. Let's watch it together as a family, or on the date of their anniversary of their death. Let's watch it again. So, oral histories are really these remarkable testimonies in time that begin to really bring light to the person that you love, you honor. God, I didn't know that they did that when they were 15 years old working in a
mhm,
factory. I had no idea. She never mentioned that, or I never
mhm,
heard it. I didn't realize that she was married 2 times. I know that she was married to my grandfather, but I had no idea that she was married to this other individual. That was sort of a starter marriage. It only lasted for about 2 years. And he was violent, but
mhm,
you begin to learn a little bit more about her. So oral histories are, once again, now with smartphones, you just prop up that smartphone, provide some prompts and allow the historian, if you will, your grandmother, your mother, your father, someone significant in your life, to be able to tell their own story, and have it recorded and have it shared. And it's a remarkable sort of moment, and a treasure that will be greater than anything you can give, anybody else. So that's sort of oral histories as really testimony to be savored, to
Mhm.
be, just really appreciated. And you get to know so much more about the other.
Okay, that that clears it up. Yeah, because I'm kind of obsessed with those now. Like I say, I was talking to my grandmother last Sunday of Mother's Day. She's 90, she's 95, 96, 95 in March. And it's funny, she still remembers a lot of stuff about me, and a lot of stuff like my favorite foods and stuff, or my other family members the same way. I don't think she's remembering. And I'm like, no, she remembers me. So I'm really fascinated with that, with the concept of memory and how it changes over the years and how you tell these stories and then they change you and they change, right? And you forget something or you add something. So I do think those things need to be recorded. And especially considering now with people, I think a lot of times with the smartphones and all the stuff, the devices that we have, we feel the need to record everything. And we feel like unless it's recorded, then it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, I don't necessarily need to see what you had for breakfast. That doesn't really, or everything you do from the time you get up to the time that,
Right, right.
but there are things that I would be interested in seeing. If people are sharing, histories or sharing, like you said, you go to a different part of the world, and how does that change you, right? What does it allow you to do? So yeah, I will definitely get it. I will definitely look into that.
And can I
Um,
just say real quickly, Anthony, one of the things that's going on with oral histories is that individuals who took that recorded history are now sharing it at funeral ceremonies.
mhm,
Just a little bit of it as a way of saying, here is the woman we most loved.
mhm.
And I did an oral history of her a couple of years ago, and I just want to share a small piece. So oral histories are now becoming sort of rituals in funeral ceremonies
Mhm.
as a way of remembrance, of memory, as you're making reference to.
I like it. Yeah, that would. Yeah, I could see that. Because now I think the big thing I've been hearing about lately is people. I don't know what they're recording at these funerals, but that seems to be the big thing. People are recording things at funerals and then posting them. I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what that means yet.
Right.
I don't know why we're doing that. I don't know what that means. Um, but your explanation in terms of using it for those purposes makes sense to me. Like that's total logic to me. There's other stuff I don't know. I think we've gone too far in the other extreme. Like I said, the recording of absolutely everything, and it's kind of like even when you go to a live performance. Like I was thinking about yesterday, what I meant. One of the things I miss most about not being able to be with other people is going to live theater, right? Because I was a theater, right? I did theater for a long time, so I miss theater, and I miss going to see live performance of theater or even music, right? And not knowing necessarily what's going to happen, and then people, you get something interesting because something happens that nobody planned for, right? And that's different than me recording it. You know what I mean? You're like, just
Right.
put the camera down and be there. Like you're not gonna watch this again, but just you're gonna miss out on something by putting that between you and it's almost like you're in the event, but that's something that you put between yourself and the event by recording it and recording everything. So it's like, no, I really do miss live theater and not knowing what's going to happen, or maybe the theater will suck, maybe it won't, maybe the person will be good, maybe it won't. And just the whole process. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So I loved all the stuff with about the dignity of children, child development. Talk to me a little bit about fatherhood as it pertains to child development, or your take on the importance or significance of fatherhood as it pertains to child development.
Wow. I have been involved in a project called Project Fatherhood,
Hmm.
that has been such a life changer for me as a therapist.
Hmm.
Um, Project Fatherhood um, has committed itself um, to really ennobling the role of fathering in family.
Hmm.
And this really all began with a remarkable African-American psychologist by the name of Herschel Swinger,
Mhm.
from Children's Institute, who said, I would love to see a Project Fatherhood like there is a McDonald's or a Starbucks on every corner.
Mhm.
That fathers don't have this opportunity to connect with each other. Fathers don't have an opportunity to talk about feelings, thoughts, and perceptions of what it means to love and sometimes feel hate for a child in one moment in time. And so fathering is really one of the most, I think, misunderstood elements of the role that a father can play in the family. Early sort of psychologists really began to look at the mother,
Mhm.
and her role in the development of a child. And unfortunately, in many sort of assumptions that were made, that it was the mother's fault that the child had autism. It was the mother's fault that the child had symptoms of schizophrenia. It was the mother's fault, you fill in the blank.
Mhm.
Um, and so there was this real strong sense from early psychologists, especially from psychoanalysis, that
Mhm.
uh, Donald Winnicott, one of the foremost theorists, talked about the good enough mother, just good enough to provide that sense of safety, security, and consistency in the love that she gave to her child. But you never heard of the good enough father. The father was out working, the father was just sort of secondary.
Mhm.
It was always within the context of mother. And so, one of the important, I think, contributions um, were many of the studies that were coming across in regards to single or families without father, where you saw increases of teenage pregnancy, increases in terms of acting out, being involved in probation,
Mhm.
not completing high school. And one of the major factors was that the father was not present in the life of the child. This is different from the father separating from the mother and or divorcing. You know, these happen all the time. But if the father is not present even after a separation or divorce, the likelihood, obviously, of some sort of at-risk behavior only increases exponentially. But a father and a mother who begin to make the decision, okay, it didn't work out between you and I, but let's love and honor our
Mhm.
children. And that makes all the difference in the world, Anthony. That makes all the
Mhm.
difference in the world. And so with Project Fatherhood, the modality of practice is group therapy, where we bring fathers together from 8 to 15 fathers at any one time. And we begin to talk about the experiences of fathering and begin to talk about feelings perhaps that they have never really explored: shame,
Mhm.
rage. You know, those are two feelings that fathers really don't want to be able to talk about. Shame at the way they were treated by their own fathers or
Mhm.
mother when they were younger. Shame at being immigrant without papers. Shame of having, you know, two of your sons currently in jail, and you're wondering, what did I do wrong? Rage against, you know, I remember a father talking about, you know, their daughter was crying and crying, and the father got a pillow and put it over her face for about 5, 7 seconds, and then released the pillow and got on his knees and started crying and says, who am I becoming?
Mhm.
What is happening to me? That rage at that moment, he had no intention of killing her. He had the intention of just shutting her up, in his
Mhm.
words.
Mhm.
And he realized, what am I becoming? And fathers begin to recognize the nobility of fatherhood, that their
Mhm.
role is not just provider,
Mhm.
protector, as important as that is, but it's also to play, and it's also to spend significant amount of time, and it's becoming a leader or a co-leader along with the mother,
Mhm.
and to be able to really develop this deeper sense. As a father, I can be playful, I can be creative, I don't always have to be serious. Damn, I can laugh and I can cry and I can ask forgiveness. You know, fathers rarely do that.
Hmm.
You know, where they, perhaps they they said something that was shaming
Hmm.
and the child cried. Perhaps they pushed their adult son against the wall.
Hmm.
And for a father to say, you know what? I blew it. I'm sorry. And for a father to be able to say, forgive me, not just once, but 20 times,
Right.
30 times. I blew it. You know this, Anthony. I know this. We blow it all the time as parents. We say things, we do things. And to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I blew it. That garners more respect than a father who doesn't say, I'm sorry.
Hmm.
It becomes resentment. It becomes, F you.
Right.
I remember these things. I remember these moments of shame. I remember these moments of you throwing me against the wall and saying I'm not going to amount to anything. And so I think it's so important. And so fathers begin to really develop this remarkable tenacity to take ownership of what it means to be a father. And it requires emotional courage each and every day.
Hmm.
That courage begins to be felt and sensed by the child. And that when I see my father, I see him now through the eyes of love, and he sees me through the eyes of love as well. And we know that fathers recognize, my child needs me. He needs me to be part of their life.
Hmm.
What the fathers begin to understand and recognize at the end is that I need my child. That's different. My
Hmm.
child needs me. Now it's I need my son.
Hmm.
I need my daughter. And without them, there's an emptiness in the heart. And that is a remarkable moment when they begin to realize I am little without my sons or daughters.
Hmm.
You know, I am little without them. And that's a remarkable transforming moment when they begin to recognize just how much they need their child.
Yeah, I think to me it always remind a couple of things came to mind. One of the things is that one of the things that I don't know if I struggle with it or it just pisses me off or I'm just kind of I feel like I'm always up against it is that I think in this culture, and when I say this culture, I'm talking about America and I'm talking about being a man of color in America. One of the things that I think consistently happens, and I heard, and it sounds like you're chipping away at it, is that we're not allowed to be fully human, right? So if all I am is an ATM,
Hmm.
and it's just like, well, I'm paying for, I'm going to work every day. Isn't that enough? And it's like you said, there's so many other things that we get to that we can contribute that culturally we're told aren't that important. That's what I was saying a couple of minutes ago about honoring people for their gifts, whatever it is they're bringing to the party. And I think a lot of times with men, particularly with fathers, because I've now been around a number of young people and the grandkids that I had when my husband and I got together 10 years ago, now they're bigger, right? They were little when I first met them. There's one that's with me now who's here now, who's 14. When I met him, he was 4, right? He's still the same sweet kid, but he's growing into adulthood, right? So then my challenge becomes how do we keep that sweetness because the world, the culture will try to beat it out of you, right? They will say that they will offer you these rewards and gifts for letting that go, and like, okay, well, if you let that go, you get to have this over here. And it's like, well, trust me, that over here is not that sweet. It
Right.
looks like it is, and looks like, I always refer to it based on paraphrasing Bell Hooks about being sacrificed for the patriarchy, right? We throw, but the kind of we think the rewards are going to be this over here if we sacrifice this person or our own children, right? We feed them to the patriarchy machine and the monster, And one of the things I've had to learn over the years is to really look at my dad, my parents, um, and because we're talking about dads, in particular my dad, look at him as a human being and look at him as somebody who not only is going to make mistakes, but he has made mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And based on and it's interesting. It's like the older we get, the more conversations we get to have about, oh, that wasn't my finest hour, or oh, I wish I would have done this, or oh, I said and did this, but it was because of this over here, and you're like, wow, like I would have done. So I think we have to create the space for to be able to have those conversations and be able to just be right and not and take to talk about the mask and everything, create conversations in places where it's okay to be rageful. It's okay to say I don't always like my kids. It's okay to say I have all this shame because of what was done to me when I was that age. So now I'm raising somebody who's the age that I remember these shame, and it's kind of like, oh, and I don't want to do the same thing, but it's almost like I can't help it. And it's really I don't know if you ever read Janet Mock's first book. She talks about when she was transitioning and the whole, being born, being assigned the male gender birth, and she talks about her father. And I'm thinking, I want to make sure I get this right, but she talks about how his treatment of her, she found out when she got older that he was trying to protect her from him. Like it was, he was an Asian of the patriarchy, but he was a lot of the stuff, a lot of their interaction was about inadvertently trying to protect her from him. And I read that and I was like, whoa. And one of those
Wow.
things that just kind of hit me. And I thought, and that helped me see my parents differently. Not only are they trying to protect me from, like you said, like the little kid for our first 100 days, that's their version of it. And it's kind of like, well, that I guess it worked. I mean, but can we do something different, right? Are we willing to take another tact, another method of doing things? So yeah, and so when I read that in her book, I thought about, I started looking at my parents, particularly in my, both of them, and saying, okay, for years I thought they were trying to, either trying to protect me from the world or feeding me to the patriarchal monster. And then I realized they may have been reading that. It made me think maybe they were protecting me from themselves. They didn't know that, and I thought that's a very different way of looking at things.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I resonate with that, Anthony. I absolutely do. That
Mm-hmm.
I do believe very strongly in the unconscious as a
Mm-hmm.
therapist. Being able to sort of explore unconscious influences on development,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a perfect example of that. Where unconsciously, I'm attempting to protect you from myself, because if you only knew me,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't know my rage the way I know it,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't know how I attempt to shame when I feel really little about myself. And so, in order to protect you from myself, I will withdraw, I will distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this I work predominantly with Latino and African American
Mm-hmm.
men, and what a powerful statement! What a powerful statement!
Yeah, I think, like I say, in an effort to, and it's really, there's something to that. I should study that. Maybe, um, there's something to I'm trying to protect you from myself, so I'm going to orchestrate whatever that I'm going to orchestrate something to make sure that there's space. You know what I mean? And it's really, it's kind of heartbreaking to me just thinking about it now. And it really requires a great deal of empathy and compassion to be able to look at somebody and say, oh, that's why you were doing that.
Yeah,
It wasn't I was this awful person. It was like that was your attempt. You know, what I mean, it's that was your attempt to save me from what was quote unquote had moved the monster that had moved into the house, which was society's whatever. There's something in the house I'm trying to protect you from. So it's a very different. You've given me a lot to think about. I'm going to write a whole piece.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a saying amongst us as therapists that all behavior is purposeful. There's nothing that's just sort of out there. All behavior is purposeful. That
Oh.
that there's a purpose behind it, an underlying motive, an unconscious
Mhm.
intention. That it just doesn't sort of generate itself from a vacuum. That when you begin to really
Wow.
study it, all behavior is deeply purposeful.
Okay.
And when you
I'm
begin to
give,
recognize that, you
give me
begin,
1 second. Let
take it in, brother,
because
take it
I'm
in.
not all behavior is purposeful. Yeah, that oh okay, I'll go go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted
No,
to.
no, I gotcha, I gotcha. And so we really begin to sort of explore, you know, marital affairs,
Mhm,
child abuse,
mhm,
you know, acts of shaming by the
mhm,
parent towards the child. You know, does the parent really wake up in the morning and say, I want to shame my child?
mhm.
No. But for some parents, that's a default. You know, that's the only way they've known because that's the way they were treated. But that shaming, there's a purposefulness to it that the parent has to explore, and that a good therapist will begin to sort of uncover, you know, what is the origin of that shaming and why.
And the reason I had to stop us for a second, take that in, is because that pushes my philosophy about behavior to the 10th degree. Because what I've said, and I was actually teaching this to some coworkers last week, because my acting coach taught me this almost 20 years ago, is that behavior doesn't lie. Like when you want to know how somebody feels about something, you can watch their behavior. And people can say whatever they want to out of their mouths, but if you watch their behavior, and I had never heard that before. And so now that puts a whole, that just puts a whole other um, spin on it. And it makes me think, because for years, for 30 years, I've dabbled in whether or not I wanted to be a therapist. Because I've had therapy, I've had great therapy. I've had therapists suggest I become a therapist. But I'm like, you're supposed to be helping me. Why are you giving me, why are you giving me career advice? That's not why I'm here. The last two that I went to suggested that. They're like, um, but that's such a cornerstone. I could definitely see using that. I can see why that works, because what it does, it shifts the going back to what I was saying before about the hostage negotiations and how he addresses people. It shifts us away from the why you're doing something and what you're trying to gain by doing this, or how does this help you, or how does this facilitate. You say you're in a relationship with this person. How does this behavior facilitate a close relationship? And then you can look at it, and it makes people stop and think like, oh well, it doesn't. Like, so why then do we need to replace it with something else? I'm so glad that oh my god, I never heard that before.
Great.
I love that. And when I write that essay, I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna let you see it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, that is great. Okay. Woo, this is quite a Sunday morning. All right. Okay. One quick question about, or quick or not, about, it sounds to me, and it seems to me through all of this, the filmmaking, the project Fatherhood, the teaching, the traveling, there's an undergirding of spirituality. So can you talk to me about whatever your practice is, whatever that means to you?
I think I really appreciate you sort of naming the glue, if you will.
Mhm,
And I would say the sense of awe, AWE.
mhm,
I'm awed by film. I'm awed by the person who's sitting in front of me in therapy. I'm awed by the men in the group. I'm awed by poetry. I'm awed by nature. I want to see the aurora borealis one day, Anthony, before I
mhm,
pass away. I just hear remarkable moments of transcendence when people are looking up at the Alaskan sky and just seeing these remarkable colors
mhm.
that are just sort of waving, if you will, in remarkable sort of ways. So I think more than anything else, I was very much influenced by a theologian called Matthew Fox.
Hmm.
He wrote a book called Original Blessing, and he looked at sort of Christian sort of origins of original sin, that there was something inherently wrong with the human person, that they were born, if you will, flawed. And he sort of turned it around and said, no, we are born as original blessings. This sense of recognizing the inherent beauty and awesomeness of the human person. St. Augustine said, no, there is such a thing as original sin. And we have to sort of fight against that. And yeah, obviously there are these sort of primal instincts. There is the reality from my perspective of sin, of social sin. But the sense of blessing that each of us is, as well as four-legged creatures, as well as eight-legged creatures. He called this the via positiva, meaning that there is something remarkably beautiful about the universe that we live in, that it's expanding. And he asked the question, are we expanding?
Mm.
And I think that this sense of awe
Hmm.
is what sort of animates me. If you see behind me, there's a whole bunch of books.
Hmm.
Those books spell awe. I'm awed by theory. I'm awed by history. I'm awed by the way other authors begin to explore certain topics. I'm a voracious reader. And so I just love the moment of opening up a book and getting remarkable information and providing synthesis to thinkings that I'm undertaking. Oh, I didn't think about it this way. Like you just had a revelation in regards to this understanding of that all behavior is there's a purpose behind it. And so when I begin to look at my career, at my life, the thing that most stands out is I'm awed by the human experience. I'm awed by the other. And so that I think is an integral part of my spirituality. And it's the reason that I am a social worker. I'm a therapist. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a professor because I'm awed by human images. If we can talk about sort of filmmaking, those moments, and when you see a film and you wonder, my God, the director and the cinematographer did something remarkable in this particular shot. Just remark, and you're awed, and sometimes you cry, and sometimes you're awed by the capacity of Tarkovsky, the Russian director, to be able to capture these remarkable images in this one moment in time. That to me is what really moves me as a man,
Hmm.
and as someone who attempts to really understand the human condition and appreciate it for what it is. Um, Awe is a glue, I think, that holds me.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I like it. I like it. I love it. As a matter of fact, I love it. I love it. So what I'm going to do now is there are 7 questions I'm going to ask you, and I didn't come up with these. These came from I heard a really great interview, and I think I included it. I think I sent it to the class. Um, there were some questions. I recently heard an interview with Viola Davis, and Minnie Driver asked her these 7 questions, and the answers were just mind. Just talk about awe. It's like wow. Like how did you? Um, so for me, it's so these questions lead to a lot of how I live my life, which I think is a lot of curiosity. My thing is, and you were the first person ever in my life. You pointed it out a couple of months ago. We were talking about the film that I'm working on about Black men and health. You posed a question, which I've read thousands of times and didn't connect it to myself, about what if, right? So a lot of the core of me is a lot of curiosity, like what if this happens, or what if I sign up for this class, this documentary filmmaking class? Worst thing can happen is I learn how to make a film, right? And we and I actually put something out and somebody responds. But there's a lot of curiosity there. So that's kind of where I live and breathe from that standpoint. You know, what if, or wonder if this could happen, or is there a way to do this differently? You know, or like you just said about the behavior and the purpose, the our behavior is purposeful. Now I get to ask, okay, when I see behavior or when I'm looking at my own behavior, what am I trying to do? Like, what is the purpose of, you know, that gives me a whole other, uh, for lack of a better term, bag of tricks to use on myself and other people when I see them doing something. It's like there's a reason they're doing that, you know. You know, there's a reason they're acting out this way. What are you trying to accomplish, right? What is the purpose of this? So here are the 7 questions. So the first one is where or when in your life were you the happiest?
Oh, I love this question. Um, when I live with integrity.
Mm,
I'm the happiest when I live with integrity, when I live to what I feel called to do. It just feels right.
okay. All right. Next question. What relationship, either fictionalized or real life, epitomizes love for you?
My children.
Okay.
I have they are love is unconditional.
Mhm,
Love laughs. Love looks at them when they're sleeping,
mhm.
and sees something awesome. That to me is that moment of remarkable love.
Okay. Uh, what question would you most like answered?
Um, why God did you create the mosquito?
Oh my goodness, that's the fun. I wasn't expecting that one. I was. Oh, oh, you want to add to that?
Eh, that's sort of a funny answer,
Mhm.
though I would like to know that.
Okay.
But the perennial sort of deeper question about suffering.
Hmm.
Um, why do children have cancer?
Hmm.
Um, why? And they pass away. That to me is really the question of suffering.
Hmm.
Why do we suffer to the depth and breadth that we do?
Hmm.
Um, that to me is sort of the existential perennial why question. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. What quality do you least like about yourself?
I can be too serious sometimes.
Okay.
Um, yeah, my son says, "Dad, I know your face, your serious face." Um, and he'll back off.
Okay.
So the serious part of me, I least like.
Okay. Okay. What person, place, or experience most altered your life?
Definitely my time in the seminary.
Hmm.
I think it brought out the best in me,
Hmm.
gifts, potentiality that I didn't realize I had. It really helped me to frame a good prayer life, um,
Hmm.
and allowed me to really grow within a group of other individuals.
Hmm.
So the seminary was really a seminal moment, and obviously there's been other remarkable seminal moments, but that is sort of the experience that I will never regret or want it for it to be taken away.
Okay. What would your last meal be?
What would my last meal be?
Mhm.
Lucky Charms with milk.
Just straight to the point, just milk and cereal. Let's
Yeah, that's
let's
it.
wrap it
That's
up,
it.
folks.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. What was something that was created by hardship? Something that was hard in your life and something really wonderful and powerful and, dare I say, beautiful that was created out of that set of circumstances?
I think undergraduate school was not necessarily easy for me.
Hmm.
I was in a seminary that had 50 students. Then I transferred to a university that probably had 15,000.
Mm.
And I realized the feeling of isolation, of loneliness, of being in a place that was predominantly white,
Hmm.
that had no connection with my Latino roots. I remember being in the library and loving books, but that sort of held me for a while. Um, I remember going to that same library and listening to Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run
Hmm.
and Neil Young, that I fell in love with. Um, but undergraduate school was not easy for me.
Okay.
And so I was not necessarily in any clubs. Um, I I worked. I went to school,
Hmm.
but many times it felt like an observer looking in. Um, Graduate school was completely different, but I think that hardship really developed in me traits of perseverance,
Hmm.
of hard work, and also knowing that if I want to be alive, meaning feel alive, I need to take the risk of connecting.
Hmm.
And so those were valuable lessons for me, um,
Okay.
as an undergraduate student. Absolutely. And I think that hardship really changed not only my love of scholarship and academia, but also the ability to always connect. We share a lot more in common than we do in terms of differences.
Okay. Okay. Well, those are some great answers. Those are all the seven, but I do have a couple of parting shots, a few more things I want to ask you. So this is we're talking about fun and being serious. So this is kind of this is a little more playful, and it's I got this one from a Jan Van Zandt, and it's kind of, and I actually use it in my work when I'm working with young people. I do a lot of STEM work with them, but I have them write it down. So this is be a verbal one. So I'm gonna give you the beginning of a sentence and have you complete it with whatever pops in your head. Okay. So right off the bat, my biggest regret.
Um, Boy, those are deeply personal ones. Let me just, because I have actually thought about this question.
Mhm.
Um, wow.
You want to skip over it? Oh, yeah.
Let me go back to it,
Okay. Okay.
because I don't want to give the right answer.
Okay.
I mean, in the sense of what I want you to hear.
Mhm.
I want to give the honest answer. And there have been several regrets in my life, some that are deeply personal. And so I just want to be careful how I say this.
Okay. So let's move on to another. We can come
You,
back to it if
you got
you
it.
want to share. If you're not, if you
Thank
don't,
you,
that's
Anthony.
fine.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we got two more for you. So instead of complaining, dot dot dot.
Do something about it.
Okay. All right. Instead of worrying.
Celebrate the positive.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
You got it.
All right, hopefully that will help, but we'll clean that up in editing. Okay, so we said instead of complaining, we did, okay, so I can't remember because I got distracted with that. Did we go over instead of worrying?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So what I'm gonna do, I won't go back to the regret question because we'll let that one go. We'll let that one slide. Um, so here's the one or two final ones to wrap up. So, and this might be the same question. So I guess it kind of is. If you could, what is your hope for humanity? And then what would be if you let's say something happens, right? In 1,000 years, they come back and they dig out some words of wisdom from Professor Angulo. What would be your words of wisdom for humanity, or what is your hope for humanity? And it might be one and the same.
What a great question. What a wonderful question. Um, we as a humanity can only thrive when we are connected, when we are relational. Isolation hurts, and it hurts badly. And so, wanting to create collectives like film,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to create a class in which there are deep connections, wanting to create a family where there is love. Um, I, the psychological research on isolation is absolutely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
That isolation has a health impact greater than cigarette smoking. That's just remarkable to think about. And so I want to be known as someone who really developed moments and programs related to relationality, to
Mm-hmm.
this deep sense of connection with each other. And so it's my hope for humanity that we are able to create these circles of friends, these circles of honoring each other, men coming together, women coming together, trans coming together, Latinx, African Americans coming together and being able to share each other's remarkable stories. That's my hope. That's my dream.
Okay. All right. Well, that is it for today. How can people reach you if they want to reach out, if they want to take your class, if they want to find you? How can they find you? How can they contact you?
Yeah, best way is through email,
Mhm.
Angulo, Angulo at usc.edu. Would love to be able to connect in whatever way that I possibly can. Can I make one more statement, Anthony?
Sure.
It's in relation to you. I think
Mhm.
you are the epitome of lifelong learner. There's a
Mhm.
lot of great stuff that's coming out on lifelong learning.
Mhm.
Our university, by the way, is really looking at, let's not just focus on students, from 18 to 25. These are sort of the general
Mhm.
ages of undergraduate students. Let's begin to look at the university as an institution of lifelong learning, where we have these programs like the one that you're involved in.
Mhm.
But I just see you, Anthony, always sort of having this openness of spirit and mind, saying, I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to listen to these podcasts, to take these classes. That to me, I think, is such a remarkable element that you have. And the way you work with our group,
Mhm.
sending emails and we go, hey, I just saw this film. Would love for you to watch it. Is just, I think, testimony to who you are. And I think as a podcaster, you have to be curious. You have to have this
Mhm.
open mind. You have to have this desire to constantly want to learn. But I think that you are a remarkable sort of example
Thank you.
in your early 50s
Mhm.
of wanting to continue to be a lifelong learner. That to me is an indelible spirit that I really just both respect and admire about you.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. That's I'm glad we have a name for it now. Because you're the second or third person in the last, I would say, I've been hearing this, the lifelong learner, I've been hearing about it. All these articles have been coming across my path, and people have been pointing to me, just like you said, as the epitome of what that's what it looks like. Somebody who, and it's so it must be like the universe is like all these different forces are like, yeah, this. So I'm glad that we have a name for it. I'm glad that I have a name for it.
Yeah, the research is showing the lifelong learners have age well,
Mm-hmm.
have longer lifespans. You know this, Anthony, musicians, conductors,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, they live to their 80s and 90s. I mean, just and so we get that. That makes a lot of sense. But lifelong learners also have remarkable capacity to age really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's really important for you, Anthony, as
Yes.
individually.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to reinforce that through some of the scientific social science literature.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. That is a great note to wrap up on. Um, I think that's everything. Or here's a bonus. What is one question I didn't ask you wish I had asked?
Um, these are all, I mean, there's like 101 questions. Um, I guess maybe one question that would have been, I think, an interesting question. Um, how how do my love of the Dodgers influence my state of mind? Um, you know, they've now won 4 in a row
Hmm.
after losing a lot of games, and there's so 5 games above 500. I'm saying this more of a jokester way, but my love of the Dodgers
Okay.
sort of sustains me and breaks me, depending on what night it is. Obviously, they won the World Series in 2020. That was a great joy, but it's also one of the things that I so enjoy. Like when I was a little kid, listening to baseball on the transistor radio.
Hmm.
You know, now it's obviously on television or on my iPhone, and that really sustains me in remarkable sorts of ways.
Okay. My grandson is heading to their game today.
Oh, is that
That's
right?
what,
Nice.
yeah, that's one of our neighbors has got him a ticket and bought him a hat. So they're
May he
should
enjoy.
be
May he
leaving in about
enjoy.
20 minutes. Okay. Well, thank you very much. You said we were going to do it. We did it. I definitely want to bring other people in the collective. Everybody in the collective, and I said this from day one when people were pitching or talking about their stories, right? Everybody's idea for their movie, I'm interested in. Like I didn't hear one thing that was like, oh, I don't, everybody who said, well, I'm doing this, even things that I hadn't heard of, right? Or things that I had never considered. Oh, you can make a movie on that. So I am infinitely interested in everybody else's project. So my goal is to get all of them to do a talk with me as well. And yeah, and that might be an oral history of this course.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm definitely interested in doing that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go have some Lucky Charms.
I could only have it once a month because they could be addicting and too much sugar.
Yeah, but have them with oat milk. I just discovered oat milk this morning. I had oat milk for the first time this morning in my coffee.
Is it good?
It's very good. I've been using almond and cashew milk, but I tried oat milk for the first time this morning. It was very good. Yeah,
Where do you get that?
we get it at the 99-cent store.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm a big 99-cent store person. So they
Yeah.
have a ton of they have a really great selection if you are eating health, if you're vegetarian or vegan.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, we go there every week. So I've got 2 freezers stocked full. So when the apocalypse comes, I'll have my oat milk. I'll have my my Brussels sprouts. I'll have my meatless burgers. All of that. The plant burgers. I have all of so they all from
Awesome.
99-cent store.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't want to take up too much of your day. I will see you next Saturday.
Next Saturday. That's right.
All right. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Anthony. Blessings.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye.